back to Music is the Source. This is episode number 5. I haven't done one of these in a couple weeks. I've been pretty busy. But now I think, hopefully over the next few weeks, it'll be a little more regular. It's probably going to be pretty crazy in the next coming week because my baby is on her way into the world. So we're pretty excited about that, to say the least. So it's very possible that the next time I do one of these podcasts, I'm going to be a dad. So, can't wait. I can't talk about it without smiling like an idiot. If you're just listening, then you can't see me, but I assure you that I'm grinning from ear to ear because I'm really excited. Can't wait. I really, really can't wait. And because our daughter, her name is gonna be Parker Jane, and we're gonna call her PJ, and that's because my wife and I are big Pearl Jam fans, and because of that, I've been on a big Pearl Jam kick these past few weeks. Really, been listening to a lot of Pearl. I've always been listening to a lot. I've been on a big Pearl Jam kick since 1994. You know what I mean? So it's not out of the ordinary for me to be on a big Pearl Jam kick. But I go through phases of I get really into Megadeth, and I get really into Metallica, and I get really into blues. For 2 or 3 weeks, and then I changed my taste changed, or not change, but the next thing that I'm just interested in that moment is what I just dive into and listen to. And for the past few weeks, it's been nothing but Pearl Jam, and I know it's because I'm naming my daughter PJ, and the Pearl Jam's like kind of her namesake. So that's what's been going on. So what I want to do today is talk to beginner guitar players. Specifically, I want to talk to, I'm addressing talking to right here. I'm talking and addressing newer players that are adults that, pretty much over the age of 30. I mean, you can take, a lot of value out of what I'm about to say if you're under the age of 30. But the challenges for an adult beginner player are different than that of a kid or of a teenager or of a younger adult, somebody that's like a college age or kind of just early 20s perspective. Just because when you're over 30 and you have work and family and shit, you have life that gets in the way, and your challenges are different than that of a teenager. Your challenges are definitely that different of a kid. Like, I've been doing this long enough to know that if I teach an adult the same way that I teach a kid, it's not going to work. And if I teach a kid the same way I teach an adult, it's not going to work. The worldview and the perspective on what it means to even learn a musical instrument is completely different, and it needs to be approached differently, I believe, as a teacher. So that's who I'm addressing here. I'm addressing specifically the adult beginner, especially if you tried to play guitar in the past. Maybe I have a lot of students that start lessons with me that took some guitar lessons when they were a kid. They took lessons when they were teenagers, and they did it for maybe a couple months or maybe a couple years. And then they stopped, and then they went off and, did whatever they wanted to do with life. They've always thought about it. They've always wanted to do it, but for whatever reason, they never just got started into doing it. Again, life usually can get in the way for a lot of people. So I want to talk to that specific group, that demographic of people, the people that have had maybe either some experience in the past, but haven't done it in many years, or just somebody that has always wanted. You just thought about it for the past 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and you just never did it. Which, why? If you want to do something, why wouldn't you try doing it? Just do it. Just do it. Do it, right? Guitar's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Guitar is not an easy instrument. If you want to do the easiest thing possible, go learn something else, because it's not easy, all right? It is hard, but that's the point. The point of learning a musical instrument is really to better yourself, and it's going to show you how to connect things that you didn't know were even possible to connect. It benefits so many areas of your life. I say this all the time, and I don't give a shit that I'm repeating myself because it's important to know. that learning a musical instrument, it benefits multiple areas of your life. If you can get good, if you could not even getting good, I don't mean getting good in terms of your technical ability. I just mean if you can do it. If you go from not being able to play guitar to being able to play guitar, you're going to realize that, holy shit, there's a lot of different ways that I could apply how I learned this, different areas of my life where you can apply the principles of learning an instrument, right? It's learning guitar is very much, very much like learning martial arts, very much like getting into shape, any type of exercise, like yoga, things like that, things that are journeys. They're not things that you knock out on a weekend. So this is the first point I want to make that I have to drill into everybody's head that's just starting out with this, okay? Well, hold on, let me back it up for a second. To this point, if you've always thought about wanting to play guitar and you're just sitting on the fence waiting for the right moment to do so, stop it. Just do it. Just do it. Go buy a guitar and just get started, all right? It is hard. It is challenging. It's going to take up some time. You have to devote time to it, all right? But it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. It's hard. It's not impossible. Anyone can do it. Anyone. I've seen it. I've seen people on YouTube, right, that have cerebral palsy. I have seen people with very severe disabilities able to play the guitar, all right? And if they can do it, you can do it too, okay? It's hard, it's not impossible. Anyone can do it. Anyone can learn how to play, right? Does it mean everyone's going to be the best? Does it mean everyone's going to, be magnificent and awesome to listen to? Doesn't mean anything. It just means that anyone could do it. You could do it, and I'm of the opinion that you should do it. It can be very beneficial if you do it, okay? So understand that first. If you're just on the fence about getting started, just stop it. Just do it. Like Gary Vee says it all the time. You're going to die, right? You're going to die. If you've always wanted to do something and you are aware that death is imminent for everybody, why would you want to put things off that you really want to do? Just fucking do it. Just do it. So that's thing number one I want to talk about. Next part here is I was comparing learning guitar to learning martial arts or getting into shape. And getting into shape in particular is something that is a very good analogy for the problems that I see with beginner guitar players over and over again. You can't approach learning a musical instrument the way that you would approach a diet or exercise routine, all right? Like a fad diet, all right? Like something that you're going to do for 90 days. You're going to eat right, and you're going to go to the gym, and you got your trainer, or you're doing P90X, whatever the hell it is, right? You're going to go do that for 90 days, and then you're going to lose your 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds, whatever it is. You're going to get that, and then what happens? What happens to everybody, myself included here, when you approach a diet and exercise routine like that? What happens is once you get the goal you want, then you go back to eating shit and not doing anything, and you gain all the weight right back. Because getting into shape isn't something you do for 30 days. It's a lifestyle change, right? It's something that you have to do continuously forever, right? And that's what guitar is. That's what any musical instrument is. It's not something you do in 30 days. It's not. I know there's courses out there that say you're going to master something in 30, 60, 90 days. You're not mastering anything in 30 days. You're not, right? You're just fucking not. And moreover, right, even if it was possible, right? It's not possible. But even if it was, you're not conditioning yourself to do it it's not possible for you to do something for 30, 60, 90 days and then be good for the rest of your life, right? It just doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. So you have to understand from the get-go that it's a journey. It's not something you do for short periods of time, right? So you can't think in days, weeks, or months, right? You can't put time constraints on doing something that you've never done before, right? That's another big thing. Like, how do you know how long it takes? You know what I mean? Like, it takes different things, different techniques take different amounts of length for everybody, right? So there is no universal standard of this is how long anything takes. So if you've never done it before, you really don't know that. Now, like, if you have some experience, if you learned some things before, you have something to kind of compare it to. Like, you understand what your practice habits are like. You understand what your average amount of volume in terms of practice hours per week is like. And you can, hypothesize that because it took you 4 weeks to learn technique A and you're about to learn technique B, you're using 4 weeks as a benchmark based off of past experience. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. But if you've never done it before, right? If you've never done anything on guitar before, right? Throw timetables out the window because you have no idea how long it takes, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's not getting to where you want to be as a guitar player is not going to take days, it's not going to take weeks, it's not going to take months. It's just not. And it doesn't matter because it's about a journey. And that's what you have to do. You have to condition yourself. You have to condition yourself to love the journey. Love the journey, not the result. Because one thing you're going to find, the more you learn on guitar, is the more shit you don't know. There's so much to learn. That's why I said it's not possible to, I was kind of rambling there for a minute back there. I didn't really know what I wanted to say, but it's not possible to master the guitar in days. It's not, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And it's like, holy shit, you're going to be doing this forever, right? And it's a cool thing. Like, it's not something that you're like, I'm going to get to this level, and once I'm there, I don't need to learn anything more. So, I mean, you can be satisfied a little bit, I guess, with, your playing. Like, you don't necessarily have to reach maximum potential all of the time, but like, there's always something new that you've never done before, right? That if you go out and explore and try to find those things, and then you try to work on them and you integrate them, like, that's the fun part. That's the stuff that you got to get jazzed up about. For me as a teacher, it's the hardest thing to teach. I can teach you chords, I can teach you scales, I can teach you songs, I can teach you music theory, I can teach you recording, I can teach you a lot of here's how to do things, right? I can teach you how to set up a practice schedule. I can, teach you what to think about when you're practicing. I can't make you love it. I can't make you be like, I love doing this, right? I can't do that. That's something that you have to learn how to do. Either you have it naturally, it's something that you just, chances are, if you're the adult hobbyist, which is who I'm talking to here, I'm talking to the adult beginner guitar player that has always wanted to do this, but has been putting it off, chances are that you're not going to love it immediately, because if you loved it so much immediately, you would have done it by now. So you have to condition yourself to learn to love the process, to learn to love the journey. You have to learn how to love mistakes. You have to learn how to be thinking about mistakes, not in a way that where you make a mistake that it's like, oh, I suck, I'm never going to be able to do this. You have to be able to think of mistakes in terms of, what can I learn from this, right? Why am I making this mistake, and how do I solve it? If you approach it from a problem-solving perspective and not, oh shit, I suck, I might as well just give up, then you're doing it wrong, right? You're doing it wrong, and I guarantee you will quit. Guarantee you will quit, because there's only so much a person can take with that. But if you change it, if you change the way you view it, if you understand that learning to love practice and conditioning yourself to love the fact that this is something that you're just going to do for the rest of your life, it's something that it's just going to be a part of you, it's just something that you do. If you condition yourself to love that, then I promise you, you're going to be way better than you ever thought was possible, okay? So, moving into what kind of questions you got to ask yourself when you're getting started, right? So first thing is, how do you learn best? Deep diving into the things that you got to think about when you're getting started, all right? I mean, we live in a great day and age where, like, if you're listening to this and you're waiting for me to, like, say start with this technique or start with this exercise or start with this or start with that. That's not what I'm going to cover here, all right? Because you can find that information all over YouTube, and I'm going to be creating content that tackles those specific types of questions. But I want to talk more about how to prepare your mind and how to prepare yourself to think of things in certain ways, right? Because that's what I see from teachers that is lacking, right? It's easier to teach technique than it is to think about how to think about practicing and how to frame this so that you set yourself up for as much success as you want. That's the challenge, solving the problems of the mind in regards to getting better at an instrument is something that is not often talked about, but it's super important. And again, this is why I believe learning a musical instrument is critical and important, and why people should do it is because if you can overcome these things via learning an instrument, which is way easier than like overcoming actual life obstacles like like divorces or deaths or whatever like that, when you're going to be faced with things that like problems that you don't know immediately how to solve. Learning a musical instrument conditions your brain to think in creative problem-solving ways. It does, right? So in order to get the most success out of it when you're starting out, you got to think. You got to be aware of. You got to do some self-analysis and be aware of how you learn best. You got to be honest with yourself. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach learning guitar. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach practicing guitar. Not one way works for everybody. There's not one size fits all. Does not exist in this world. It just doesn't. And you have to understand how you learn best. Meaning, are you somebody that like needs to be taken by the hand and being like shown, okay, like you need to put this finger. I'm pointing to my index finger here for those that are just listening. You're pointing to your index finger. You need to take this finger and then you need to physically put it here, and you need to bend it like that, and every single step needs to be laid out for you in painstaking detail. All right, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you like that? Or do you need that level of guidance? And I've seen students that are like that, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But if you're like that, then you need a teacher. You need to be in face-to-face lessons with somebody. Trying to teach yourself on YouTube or any other means of self-study courses, it's going to be tricky for you in the beginning if you just need that level of attention, right? And honestly, if you are that kind of person that needs everything laid out and you need to do this and you need to do that, you need to do that, you need to be studying with a teacher that teaches you how to break yourself from that habit. Because if you don't learn how to solve your own problems, you're making your journey harder, right? That's a big part of how I teach, and what I believe in is that as teachers, as music teachers, you're not just teaching do this to get this result, right? You're teaching how to approach solving this problem, right? Because if you can do that on your own, it's probably the reason why a lot of teachers don't teach this, is because you will run out of business if you show people, students won't stay with you as long, in theory, if you show them how to approach actually solving problems and they're practicing versus just spoon feeding every single step of the way, all right? But I'm getting off on a tangent on that here. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you are the type of person that needs that level of detail, of attention to detail, then you need to be with the teacher. You need to be in a face-to-face lesson with the teacher, and hopefully you could find a teacher that understands that breaking you of the habit of needing to be spoon-fed everything in such painstaking detail is something that you need to overcome. You need to be given exercises that force you to solve problems on your own. You need to make a lot of mistakes, and you need to understand how to learn from them, right? That's rough, hard, cold truth. I say that to students sometimes, and they get freaked out. They get freaked out that I'm not going to hold their hand the entire time. I hold their hand. I will show you what to do. I will, I want you to be able to get some upfront success, but I'm talking long term here. I'm talking long term. If you don't break yourself from those habits, you're making it harder on yourself in the long run. All right. So, getting a teacher for a beginner student is, I recommend it. I recommend it because I didn't have a teacher, and it took me way longer to be able to play guitar than I'm always amazed when I teach students and they're doing things like in months 3, months 4, months 5, months 6 that I couldn't do in year 3, year 4, year 5 of me playing. And that's because I've said it before, I'll repeat myself a million times, I took the hardest possible path to learn this instrument. I did it all by myself. I didn't have teachers, didn't have lessons, didn't have nothing. Literally it was almost like somebody invented the guitar, handed it to me, and was like, go figure out how to do this. That's basically what happened. And so having a good teacher rather, is a good first step in getting started, right? I mean, what the tendency seems to be in this day and age, like, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I would say more beginners went right to the face-to-face lessons than they do today, and that's because technology has improved. It's easier to get good quality instruction from your home that is, it's live. It's not necessarily face-to-face if it's like, done via Skype or other means, but you can get good quality instruction from teachers that know what the hell they're talking about in 2019 that you couldn't get in 2009 and 2005 and beforehand. But for those that like to take local lessons, that like it's not like I've had that happen many times where students want to come take lessons from me, but they're a little outside of driving distance from where I teach from. And the traffic in the Metroplex can be pretty crazy. So even if like they're a close distance in terms of miles with traffic, it depending on the time of day, it could take forever. And like I get it. I wouldn't want to commute. I wouldn't want to commute at all. So I offer Skype lessons to those students that, hey, if you don't want to make the drive but you still want to take lessons from me, we could do it over Skype. And I've heard it enough to say that a lot of people think like this, that it's like, nah, it's not my thing. It's not, I need to be in the room and have it be a real interaction and not over the internet, which I get. I totally get it. That's preference. I've taught a lot of Skype lessons. I will admit Skype lessons aren't my favorite thing to do. I do them. There's just a lot of limitations with Skype lessons. It could just be the Skype platform itself. If I switch to like a Google Chat or something, the connection and some of the latency issues would be solved. I never really looked into it, but there is issues with doing that. But getting a good teacher, how to find a good teacher, you have to ask good questions when you're looking for a teacher. You have to understand that not all guitar teachers are cut from the same cloth. You're not choosing a guitar teacher is not like choosing, between buying a 12 pack of Coke at Kroger versus buying a 12 pack of Coke at Albertsons, where at Kroger it's $1.99 or however much Coke is, $4.99. I have no idea. I don't buy soda. And then Albertsons it's 99 cents. Like it's the same product, but one's cheaper. You're getting the same thing. Music teachers are not commodities. There's not one size fits all in terms of the quality of instruction. And not to knock on the guys that charge really cheap, but I've yet to see any teachers that charge like $10 for a 30-minute lesson be any have worthwhile instruction, right? I'm sure they're nice guys. I'm sure they're great people. I'm not knocking them as people, but you definitely get what you pay for. You definitely get what you pay for. So what you want to do when you're shopping for a guitar teacher is you want to ask some important questions. The first question that you want to ask is you want to ask them, how do they teach? Because if somebody says to you that like they have a method book, right, that they all teach from, this is my method, I teach the same way to everybody, I think you're decreasing the probability that you're going to succeed with that teacher. Because unless your interests and your preferred style of music that you want to play, unless it perfectly matches up with what that teacher teaches, then you're going to run into some problems, you know. I tell all new students when they call me asking for lessons, I ask them, you know, because not a lot of people even think to ask these types of questions. You know, just most people think that it's all the same. You know, you're taking guitar lessons from me, it's the same as taking guitar lessons from the guy down the street. You know, you're learning guitar. What's there to it? But there is a lot more to it, you know. And any guitar teacher, I think, any good guitar teacher will tell you that. So what I ask my students, it's, you know, what do you want to play, right? Because if you are interested in playing jazz, I'm not your guy, right? If you're interested in playing Spanish style flamenco guitar, I'm not your guy. I can't teach those things, right? Not only can I not teach them because I don't know how to play them, I'm not even interested. I'm not interested in listening to them. You know what I mean? I'm not a big jazz guy. Like, I could respect jazz, but I don't really listen to it that much, right? And I don't listen to Spanish style flamenco guitar ever. So if somebody calls me for that, I'm not going to waste their time and money to teach them something that I can't do, right? Unfortunately, a lot of guys do that, right? A lot of guys sell the idea of lessons that they could teach anything to anybody, anywhere, anytime. And just because somebody is proficient in playing a certain style doesn't necessarily mean that they could teach it, right? That's the next big thing, is don't judge a teacher based off of some dumb playing metric, right? If I know teachers that aren't crazy technical advanced, right? That are excellent teachers, especially for beginners. They understand the beginner mindset, because that's another thing that could tend to happen. I've seen this. Super advanced players that teach, when they bring on a beginner, they're bringing on a beginner because the market for beginner guitar players is bigger than the market for advanced guitar players. Just is. And so there's more business and more money to be made when you attract beginner guitar players. And I've seen players that are on the advanced side of things, right? That are like, especially ones that have music degrees. They know a lot. They've done a lot. They've maybe toured the world. They are super technically accurate, that give absolute shitty lessons to beginners because, you know, they're at a different spot in their journey and they're demanding this professional, you know, and intense level of regimentation in terms of practicing to somebody that is just starting out and doesn't want to be a professional musician, doesn't even want to play music in a live setting, just wants to do it for their own personal benefit. You have to realize that you teach those people differently, right? I'm going to teach somebody that is an adult hobbyist way differently than I'm going to teach somebody that's like wants to be a professional musician. There's different levels of commitment, you know what I mean? And you got to understand that. So if you're looking for a guitar teacher, you have to ask those types of questions. How do you teach the lessons, right? How do you teach? And if somebody says they teach all styles, everything, they teach everything and they're great at teaching everything, raise a red flag to that, because maybe they do, right? Maybe they are that good. But in my experience, that's a rare thing. It's a rare thing to encounter somebody that is super proficient in teaching every single style of music, every single skill level of music. Like they're just the best at teaching all levels, right? They might be really great at one or two. They might be okay at another couple, and they might absolutely suck or not even be interested in it. I know that too. I know a lot of advanced guys that they're not interested in. Not that they can't teach beginners, but they just don't like to. They don't like to teach beginners. They like to teach guys that are advanced. And I know a lot of other teachers that don't like to teach advanced people. They only like to teach beginners. They only like to teach kids. They only like to teach teenagers, right? Every teacher is different. And so you have to understand where they're coming from. You have to understand who they help best. And are you a match with them, all right? Are you a match with them? Because there's no one size fits all with that, all right? So hopefully that's some good advice with looking for a teacher. And now if you go the self-study route, which that seems to be an easier way to get started, because looking for a teacher, I get it, right? Especially I'm a lazy person. I know that if I was starting guitar in 2019, I'm not going to leave my house to go to somebody's studio to learn when I could just jump on YouTube and be like, how do I start playing guitar? And oh, that's the way. Okay, I'm just gonna do that then. Like, I get it. So usually what I see, why people come to me for lessons to begin with, is that they start by teaching themselves. They don't know where to go, and then they just like, all right, well, I tried it by myself. It didn't work. Let me come to you now. So let me give you some advice if you're doing the self-study route. One, it's easier these days than it was for me. When I started as a kid, this is pre-internet, pre-dial-up. Nothing. I did not have the luxury that someone today would have getting started learning guitar. But what I would say to getting started from learning on YouTube is you want to be more upfront on doing fun things, okay? Which this might sound obvious, but it's important. Because fun is it's a little bit of a relative term, right? What may be fun for one person is not fun for the next. You want to do things that make you want to play the guitar, because the secret to just getting over the hump as a beginner is just doing it. You just need to do it. You need to have your guitar you need to be on a stand. Don't put it in a case. Have it out so that you can see it, you can grab it, and you can play it. Because that's what the challenge for me as a teacher with brand new players is, just making sure that they're doing it, that they're putting the time in, and they're not looking at it like a chore, like something that just has to be done. I have to play guitar now. I got to practice guitar now. Like, no, it's something that you want to do, right? So if you're on your own and you don't have a teacher to be like, try this, do this, find out what's fun, and create a curriculum based around what interests you. If you're going to do that for yourself, I would recommend doing things like I would recommend learning songs, right? But I don't think that you need to start off with learning full songs from front to back, note for note, right away, right? I almost never, ever teach a note for note rendition to a song to a beginner guitar player, because I don't think it's worthwhile. There's too many things that you need to be aware of as a player, as a newer player, when you're just starting out, and getting into like the nitty gritty of learning something note for note accurate when you're brand new, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So what I do for my students is I scale things back, right? And this is where it's a little tough to do if you're on your own. If you don't know that something is complicated because you've never done it before, then you don't know. So it's hard to scale back on something that you don't even know that is complicated. This is why I recommend a teacher. But look for one string versions of songs. That's kind of what I do. So if somebody like comes to me and wants to learn, and Metallica is their favorite band, and they want to learn Metallica is what they want to do. They want to be able to play Justice for all the way through every song, all the solos, everything. Okay, but they're just getting started. Okay, they never played anything before, and that shit is hard. Right? You're not gonna. If I try to teach somebody, the song "Injustice for All" by Metallica, who just started playing guitar today, like, it's gonna be epic failure 99.99999% of the time. All right, but so what I'll do is I'll recognize, okay, this person has an interest in this. How can I take whatever song it is the song One is probably a pretty good one from Justice for All. Now I think about it. Doing just the intro, right? You don't have to do the whole song, but doing just a little piece of a song, as long as you're focusing on the right things when you're doing it. Again, another hard thing to do when you're self-studying. It's kind of why it's more beneficial to have a teacher. But if you're focusing on, things like, what's the correct amount of pressure I need into the note? Am I holding the pick correctly? Am I fretting the note, pressing into the note and picking the string at the same time? Are my fingers touching any adjacent strings, causing muting that I don't want? All these core things that need to be thought of when you're new at practicing. To be able to do that in the context of a song you love, that's what I've seen the most results in, because it's not overwhelmingly hard. But it's recognizable to you, and you see that, okay, if I do this, I can create the stuff that I want to create. It's bite-sized enough to where it's not overwhelming, but it also could be a little challenging. That's why I try to scale. I do that all the time. I think it's so beneficial, right? So I would, like I said, if you're self-studying, I would go up front and put more work in things that you find fun. I say songs and riffs because in my experience, that's what I did. That's what most people find fun. That's the reason why you want to play guitar. You usually don't want to play guitar to learn a bunch of scales and exercises. You do it to want to learn music. So you should go up front with trying to learn stuff. Having said that, don't neglect the technique side of stuff, okay? Because you're gonna make your life easier, and you're gonna be able to learn more things more rapidly if you develop your core skills. If you get better, you train your ear. If you learn a little music theory, if you improve your technique, you learn how to visualize things on the fretboard, right? If you do work on specific areas of just being a better overall musician, you make learning songs easier. You make all the fun things that you want to do easier to achieve, right? But I also know that when you are approaching it from a self-study perspective, you just don't know. You don't know what you should start on, right? And it's tricky. It's a tricky thing to do. So, next thing I have on my little outline here is choosing the right guitar. If you don't have a guitar, and you're looking to get started, and you're in the market for buying one, I get asked all the time, what kind of guitars do I recommend? I'll stay up front. I'm not a big gear guy. I've never been a big coveter of gear. I don't really care. I know things that exist. I know what a lot of things sound like the most popular stuff. But I never got super into the nuts and bolts of everything, right? But I'm gonna give you some general principles here with choosing your first guitar. I'm not even gonna really talk about brands. The only brand I really ever recommend for beginner guitar players are Mexican-made Strats, because they're well built, they sound really great, and they're reasonably priced. What you want to be thinking about if you're looking at buying a guitar, cheap is not better ever, really ever. But if I know your mindset, if you're thinking I'm just going to get something cheap because I'm just new at this and I don't really know if I'm going to stick with it, and I don't want to really invest the money if it's not something that is fun. I get it. But on the same hand, if you spend just a little bit more, it's not even that much. Like a Mexican-made Strat, you could definitely get a used one on Craigslist for $300. You know what I mean? $300, $400. If you buy it brand new, I believe they're in between $400 and $600. I want to say. I have one. I retrofitted mine, so mine was a little more expensive than the sticker price. But I want to say I spent $600, $700 on it. Which it's a lot of money. But a Rogue or Squire is already $99, $150. So yeah, I get it. You don't want to spend an extra $300 to get a Fender Mexican Strat when you can just get a Squire and test it out on that and build it up. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But hear me out. Those guitars are cheap for a reason. They're cheap for a reason because they don't feel good and they have a lot of problems with staying in tune. They don't sound that good. There's just problems with cheap guitars. They're cheap for a reason, right? There's a reason why there's not one famous guitar player that I could think of that plays a Squire, right? I don't like plays a Squire all the time, right? I don't know. I don't think that exists. So when you are looking at buying a guitar, you need to be aware that how it feels and how it sounds and how it looks is important to you doing it, okay? If you have a cheap guitar and it's a pain in the ass to play, are you going to want to play it? Like if you have a $30 acoustic that you found at a pawn shop where the fucking strings are a foot off the neck and it takes 800 pounds of pressure to form one note, right? And it hurts and you go and you hit it and 9 times out of 10 it's muted because it involves using that much pressure. And then when you do get it clean, it sounds like shit anyways. Like how much are you going to want to play that guitar? Like really? Like are you going to want to do that every day? You're going to want to practice that on that every single day? Like you're making it hard on yourself, right? So if you just invest a little more money and get something that looks good, right? Because having a guitar that's good to look at, it's like, ooh, I kind of want to play it, right? Sometimes students bring in their guitars, and I have a couple of students that have gorgeous, gorgeous guitars. And God, you see them and you're just like, I just want to play that. Holy shit. So if it looks good, you're going to want to do it. And if it feels good when you play it, if it feels good and it sounds good when you play it, you're going to increase the chances that you play it more often. And that's the name of the game. You just need to keep doing it. You need to keep doing it. What did I say at the beginning? You have to learn to love the journey, right? Well, part of the journey is that you got to do it all the time. And if you have a tool, your tool in this case is the guitar, that is not fun to play, why would you do it? So having something that is good to look at, feels good, sounds good, and even if it is a little more expensive, well, now it's kind of like, shit, I spent all that money on it. I spent, I could have bought a $100 guitar and, the frame of mind is like, oh, I'll try it out on this, and if it doesn't work out, then, well, it doesn't work out. And if it does work out, then I'll upgrade, right? Versus if you just spend that money now you made a commitment, you made a financial commitment to be like, I'm going to do this. That could be motivating, right? I mean, it could also burn you, and just because you buy a better guitar doesn't mean that you're actually going to practice. You have to actually set aside the time to practice. But I've seen it be a motivator too. All right. So one, understand that, and then two, be aware of what's your genre, right? Like what kind of music do you want to play? If you want to play heavy metal, right? If Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer, whoever, if that's your shit, don't buy an acoustic guitar, because you're not going to be able to accurately recreate the sounds that you're trying to recreate on an acoustic guitar. Likewise, if you are into James Taylor and Paul Simon, don't buy a Jackson with the Floyd Rose whammy bar on it. Like, that's counterproductive. You need to buy something that fits the type of music that you're most interested in playing, right? Like some guys are, in the rock blues realm, they like acoustic and they like electric. I'm in that category, myself. I like it all. But what you get started with, a very common misconception, a common myth, is that you start on an acoustic and then you graduate to an electric. And I don't know where the hell that got started, but it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. One, an electric guitar is easier to play. Electric guitar, the strings are lighter. They're generally closer to the fretboard, generally easier to fret, less effort to fret a note. You need something to plug it into, right? So you need an amp or some sort of amp modeling software in order to adequately hear the sound. But to think that you start on an acoustic and then you learn the core skills on acoustic and that sets you up to be better on electric, like, no. You play chords and scales the exact same way on both instruments, right? There's certain techniques like string bending that are harder to do on an acoustic. That doesn't mean that you can't do them. It's just that they're harder to do just because of the way the instrument is built. But you need to choose more based off of what the music is you're trying to play versus this idea of, you know, an electric is harder than an acoustic. It's not. It's easier. It's easier to play. See, I can't tell you how many times I've had a student come in with a really shitty acoustic and they're trying to play, and then I give them an electric guitar to practice on, and they're like, oh wow, this is way easier. Yes, it's way easier. Electric guitar is way, way fucking easier. Okay, so I'm talking here for 46 minutes. I want to wrap this up. Just a couple of little quick things, quick tips for people that are just starting out, right? So now, hopefully, I've guided you, and you're understanding that having a teacher in the beginning stages of things is way more beneficial than self-study. I'm going to say that, you know, self-study is important. I mean, like, really, I think the most efficient type of student is one that has a teacher but also does a little bit of self-study, right? Like, the students that I have that are generally most obsessed with becoming as good as they want, like as good as they could be, they don't learn everything from me because I can't teach you everything, and two, we live in a great time where you can learn so much shit. So our lessons get structured based off of solving challenges. Again, like I was saying, like a big thing with me is I spend a lot of time about what are you thinking about when you're practicing, how are you practicing, you know, how to love the journey, how to set up stuff, how to solve problems. And, you know, we'll work on songs and techniques that are specific to that student's strengths and weaknesses. But I always say, man, like, do what I tell you to do, and then go learn something that I didn't teach you, right? Because hopefully the stuff that I'm teaching you, you can apply it to learning other things. All right, so I find that having a teacher, but also having elements of self-study, if you combine those two things, I think that's probably the best way to approach it, right? Because that's what I'm trying to do. When I'm teaching my students, I'm trying to teach you how to learn, not just how to play guitar. If you learn how to learn how to do stuff, then, you know, you can take private lessons with me for, you know, a few weeks and then have a lot of success just going to teach yourself. Because I just want to get you to a point where you can understand how you learn things, all right? So, a couple tips for beginners when they're just starting out and, you know, not sure what to think about when you're doing things. Okay, I'm not really talking about exercises or specific songs to learn, right? Just general technique things that I could explain via a podcast, that if you're just listening, that you could get value out of this without having to see me demonstrate stuff. So babysitting both hands is probably the thing that I see a lot of beginners not want to do this, right? Like, because what I think happens is a beginner will see either me play or insert famous guitar player or insert any other guitar player here. They see somebody play where they're not looking at their hands when they're playing, and they think, okay, I have to do that. I have to not look at my hands when I'm playing. And that's a goal, but you can't get to that goal without looking at your hands, all right? Your hands are only going to be as good as you tell them what to do, right? You have to tell them what to do, and they're only going to be as good as what you tell them to do, right? So if you start out with learning something and you're not looking at your hands and making sure that they're doing exactly what you want them to do, you're going to have some problems, right? That's how bad habits actually develop. Bad habits don't develop from, I was just doing it wrong. It's not that you were doing it wrong. It's you were doing it wrong and you weren't paying attention at, I need to be aware of this, right? So it's all about self-awareness. So if there's one key piece of advice I could tell you when you're just starting out and you're brand new, is do not be afraid to look at your left hand before you pick something, look at your right hand before you pick something, Make sure that they're in the configurations that you want. Make sure that everything feels right before you do it, right? That's the reason why everybody says to go slow. You go slow because you have to give yourself time to process information and deliver that information to your hands so that they're doing the things that you want them to do, right? That's the point of practicing, okay? So don't be afraid. It's necessary. You start off with babysitting your hands, and you're going to be constantly, but you should be constantly babysitting them. And you do that until you get to the point where that starts to feel a little natural, a little automated. And when you get to that point where it starts to feel like you don't need to look, that's when you can remove this idea of not looking at your hands, and you can develop the feel of when something's correct versus having to look, okay? But you can't reverse that. You can't start off with not looking and then try to solve the problem. I mean, I guess you could, but you're going to run into a lot of problems if you do that, right? I've never seen it really truly work that way. And it's going to hurt, right? So this is one of my most cruel exercises to give to beginner guitar players to do. So it's going to hurt, right? Like if you never played guitar before, and especially if you have a piece of shit acoustic where the strings are a mile off the neck and they're rusty and it hurts to play. Even if you have a beautiful, like easy to play, Strat or something, the more you play, not the more you play, when you first get started, like the tips of your fingers are going to hurt, right? Because you have to develop calluses. And I recommend developing calluses as fast as possible. It sucks, but the sooner you get those tips of your fingers to harden up, it becomes less painful and it becomes easier to do a lot of things. So one of the things I recommend to do to develop calluses, which is extremely cruel, but it's so effective, let me just get my guitar. So I apologize if you're just listening to the podcast and you can't see me here. If you're listening, you just jump on YouTube, Music is the Source, episode 5, scroll to the end, you'll see what I'm talking about, okay? So the little exercise to develop calluses faster, again, it's cruel, but you simply just take your finger and you press down on a string, right? So you go to start with the index finger, I'm going to press down on the high E string, and I'm going to press hard, and I am just going to slide that sucker up and down the fret, feeling the fret wire go over my finger with hard pressure. I'm going to repeat that. It's going to hurt. Don't do it for long, and repeat with each finger. If you do that, it hurts. It's going to hurt. Don't do it for like a minute because you're not going to be able to, especially if you're brand new and your fingers. I have some pretty decent calluses today. I've been practicing a lot. So if you do this and it hurts, do it for about 5-10 seconds, and it's going to hurt, but you're going to develop a callus really fast, really fast, and then moving on. The next day it's going to hurt less, and then after like 2 days after you do that, like you should be okay, good to go. All right. Maybe just guitar down. And the last piece of advice to beginner guitar players is to hold yourself to a higher standard. All right. What I mean by that, it really boils down to ear training. Is a lot of times students that don't have naturally good ears, which again I was one of them. And when I say hold yourself to a higher standard, I came up with that phrase because that's how I had to put it to myself as I went along my musical journey. I've said before, that I wasn't born with a good ear. Many times I would be learning something and I would learn it incorrectly because I just thought it went a different way. I wasn't listening critically, right? I didn't develop that skill until later on in life. And that's why ear training is so freaking important. So freaking important for everybody. And I see a lot that the problems of the beginner student aren't technical related, they're ear related, all right? They're not hearing what is supposed to be, what they're trying to recreate. It's not locked in their ear and their head first. It's lost in space, and they're just trying to regurgitate tabs. We're trying to regurgitate what the YouTube video said. You know what I mean? So getting something in your ear first before you're trying to learn it is important. Holding yourself to a higher standard is you have to be aware of what you're doing and be able to compare it, right? So if you're learning a song or you're learning a riff and you're unsure of how it goes, right? You're making it hard on yourself. But let's say you start practicing it, right? If you're not comparing it to what you're trying to do and learning to listen to how you're doing it and wanting to improve that, doesn't mean like you're not gonna do everything where you try it on the first time and you're gonna get it. You're gonna fail a whole lot. It's part of the game, right? It's part of the whole process. Is you're going to try something, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to try something, you're not going to be able to do it. It's going to take you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600, 700, 800, 1,000 times, whatever it takes. So you have to learn how to fail, right? You have to learn how to love failing, but you have to you have to realize that good enough just isn't good enough, right? Like, if you hold yourself to a higher standard, if you really strive to get things like correct, right? If you put a premium on it just not being learned, but being learned correctly and being learned where there's no extra string noise happening and that it's in time, and that it feels natural and it feels comfortable and you don't have to devote a lot of brain power to doing it. You can just do it, right? That's what I mean by hold yourself to a higher standard. There's a whole world difference between you learned a riff, right? You jump on YouTube, you learn a riff, you memorized it, right? You memorized how to play it without needing the YouTube video, right? Does that mean you have it mastered? No, it means you have it memorized, right? So if you hold yourself to a higher standard, so like, you know what, I'm not just going to settle for being able to kind of sort of play it. I'm going to settle for being able to play it fucking perfectly or close to perfectly, or to at least to where it feels good and sounds good when I play it 9 times out of 10 when I play it, right? If you change your standard of what is acceptable and you hold yourself to a higher standard, once again, you're going to be amazed at the results that you get, all right? So I'm going to cut it off there. I've been talking for an hour. I try to keep these solo ones where it's just me talking to an hour, and just getting into saying what I wanted to say and trying to keep it condensed to the point. I felt like I might have rambled and ranted a little bit with this podcast, but you know, I'm still kind of new at this, so cut me a break. But yeah, so to just recap everything here, all right? Beginner guitar players, guitar is hard, but you can do it, and that's the point, all right? It's not going to take days or weeks. It's going to take a longer time. Fuck time. It does not matter. Don't think about how long it takes, okay? Understand how you learn best. Be self-aware of that. Are you more regimented? Do you need things to be more, free-flowing? Do you need to be taken by the hand? Like, do you like to learn things on your own? Like, you need to be self-aware of what your best way to learn is. I highly recommend, if you're new, to start off with a teacher, especially a good teacher. Don't just get any teacher. Interview them, right? Ask them questions. And if you don't know what to ask them, shoot me an email or comment or get at me, tweet me, whatever you got to do. Ask me what I should ask my teacher, and I'll be happy to help you out. Because understand there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching. Not everybody teaches the exact same way. If you're going to go the self-study route, focus on things up front that are more fun, song-related, but also understand that you need to work on technique too, just to make the whole process smoother, faster, and more fun long-term. Choose the right guitar for you. So if you're going to play, strummy acoustic folk music, buy an acoustic guitar. If you're going to play death metal, buy a guitar that's got humbucking pickups in it. Be aware of what guitars suit the style of music that you're trying to play. Babysit both your hands as you're learning. If you're brand new, you got to tell your hands what to do. It's gonna hurt, so develop calluses. That just comes down to just do it, or you could do that crazy, cruel exercise that I gave you before. And then hold yourself to a higher standard. Don't just, think good enough is good enough, all right? And most importantly, learn to love the journey. It's a journey. It's not something you pop out on a fucking weekend. It's something that's going to take time, right? You have to devote time. It's something you do long term, not short term, okay? So that's it for this episode of Music is the Source. I am John Chorba, and I will see you all next time.